welcome back to Tea Time with Tara. I'm your host, Tara, and this is the third installment, I think, of our Can We Talk mini-series, where we talk about the parts of relationships that are so difficult for so many of us to talk about openly. I am so glad that you're here. In the last episode, we unpacked emotional labor, what it looks like, where it comes from, and how it wears us down when it goes unrecognized or unreciprocated. That episode hit hard for a lot of listeners. So thank you for those of you who reached out to me, shared your stories, and reflected on how deeply that topic resonated. That is exactly why I do what I do. This is all for you guys. So this episode is a little different and a little softer, a little more personal, because emotional safety is one of those things that you don't always know you're missing until you finally feel it. A lot of us think we've experienced emotional safety. We say things like, my partner doesn't yell at me, or we don't fight that much, or we're really stable. And while that might feel good, it doesn't always mean that we're safe. For years, I thought I had experienced emotional safety at some point or another in a past relationship. Anytime that there wasn't chaos or there wasn't screaming. And on the surface, things seem okay. But deep down, I was walking on eggshells, still holding my breath before saying things or speaking up, still second guessing myself if I was being too sensitive or too emotional. It wasn't until I experienced true emotional safety that I realized how tense I'd been for so long. So that's what we're going to get into today. What emotional safety actually is, what it's not, why so many of us have never really felt it, and how we can start to build it into our relationships, whether it is romantic, platonic, or even with ourselves. This is going to be a vulnerable one for me. So let's pour a cup of tea, or in my case, coffee again this morning because it is very early, and let's get into it. So first things first, some of you might be asking, what is emotional safety? And I think it's important that we define that very clearly here before we go any further, because so many of us have experienced connection, attachment, and even love, but we may not have actually experienced true emotional safety. Emotional safety is the sense that you can bring your full self into a relationship without fear of being ridiculed, dismissed, ignored, punished, or abandoned. It's that feeling of, I can be honest here. I can be my full, true self here, and I'm not going to be punished for it. It's the knowing that your feelings won't be turned against you, twisted into weapons, or met with sarcasm or silence. It's having space to be misunderstood without it becoming unsafe. Let's break it down. It means being able to disagree without feeling like the relationship is at risk. It means being able to say, that hurt my feelings, without the other person getting defensive or shutting down. It means having boundaries, and those boundaries are respected, not guilt-tripped. It means knowing that if something's wrong, you can talk about it without it becoming a war. Emotional safety feels like exhaling, relaxing your shoulders, speaking freely, and knowing that you'll still be cared for afterward, being able to cry and not feel embarrassed about it, and having your silence understood and not interrogated. So let's be clear. Emotional safety is not the same as agreement. You can have emotional safety and still have differences, tension, and even conflict. The difference is in how that conflict is handled. Emotionally safe relationships allow for rupture and repair. They give you room to speak and also room to change your mind. They allow you to express fear, anger, or sadness without being labeled dramatic, unstable, or too much. This kind of safety doesn't always come naturally. For many of us, it was never modeled. So we confuse comfort with safety, or silence with peace, or calm with connection. But emotional safety is deeper than just we don't fight. It's I can tell you the truth and still feel safe with you afterward. Sometimes the best way to understand something is to look at what it's not. A lot of people think they have emotional safety in their relationship just because there's no yelling, no name calling, and no dramatic fights. But absence of chaos is not the same thing as presence of safety. Let's walk through some examples of what emotional safety isn't, even though it might be mistaken for it. Emotional safety is not just we don't fight. Plenty of couples never fight, but only because one person is constantly biting their tongue, suppressing their feelings, and avoiding having hard conversations. That's not peace. That's fear wrapped in politeness. If you're afraid to rock the boat, afraid to express yourself honestly, afraid of what might happen if you bring something up, that's not emotional safety. That's emotional self-abandonment. Emotional safety is not stability at all costs. You might have routines, consistency, and shared responsibilities. You might live together, raise kids, or build a life that looks solid from the outside. But inside, you feel like you can't speak your truth without a fallout. Sometimes stability is a survival strategy. We settle into what's predictable, even if it's unfulfilling or emotionally unsafe, because we fear change more than we value authenticity. Emotional safety is not agreeing all the time. If you agree on everything because you're afraid of being dismissed, ignored, or accused of overreacting, that's not safety. That's self-erasure. True emotional safety can hold disagreement. It allows you to express opposing views, especially on sensitive topics, without fear of being made to feel small or stupid or too much. Emotional safety is not managing your partner's reactions. If you find yourself constantly planning how to phrase things, anticipating how your partner will respond, or walking on eggshells to avoid setting them off, you're not in a safe space. You're in a controlled one. Emotional safety doesn't mean never upsetting the other person. It means knowing that if you do, the reaction will still be respectful, loving, and rooted in care. Emotional safety is not being the strong one. If you're always the one who holds it together, who doesn't cry, who keeps things calm, that's a role, not safety. Real safety is mutual. You can fall apart sometimes. You can say, I'm not okay. You can bring your mess, not just your mask. The reason this matters so much is because so many of us convince ourselves we do have emotional safety until we're in crisis, until we try to bring up a need and get met with defensiveness, or until we express hurt and get stonewalled, until we cry and get told we're being too emotional, until we realize we've never once truly felt held without performing emotional gymnastics to get there. Emotional safety isn't passive. It's not something that just happens. It's something that's created consciously, intentionally, and over time. Let's dig a little deeper into why emotional safety is so hard to come by, especially for those of us who have never truly felt it. Because this isn't just about difficult partners or toxic relationships. It's also about what we've learned growing up, what we've absorbed, what we survived. Emotional safety, or the lack of it, starts long before our adult relationships. Attachment wounds. If your emotional needs were unmet in childhood, you may have grown up without a reliable sense of safety. Maybe your caregivers were inconsistent, unpredictable, or emotionally unavailable. So now as an adult, you might struggle to trust that people will stay if you show your real emotions. Keep your needs small so you won't be too much. over-explain everything because you fear being misunderstood or abandoned, or shut down entirely to avoid conflict that once felt threatening. When your early environment didn't support emotional vulnerability, your nervous system learned it's not safe to feel. It's not safe to need. It's not safe to be me. Gendered socialization. As we talked about in earlier episodes, many men are conditioned to suppress their feelings, avoid vulnerability, and maintain control. And many women are conditioned to take responsibility for everyone else's emotions while minimizing their own. So, in heterosexual relationships, you often get this really painful mismatch of a partner who's constantly scanning the emotional environment, trying to make it safe, and another partner who avoids emotional discomfort at all costs because they're keeping the peace by saying nothing. And this isn't necessarily male versus female, that's just an example. I actually know a few couples where this is swapped, and obviously there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more nuance to it as we're going through here, that sometimes people learn in their childhood for whatever reason. It may not even necessarily be a parent. It could be a sibling that they grow up with that creates this kind of toxic and stressful environment where they don't feel safe. And so they feel like they have to keep the peace. And so by avoiding any emotional discomfort, they are keeping the peace. So they just kind of suppress their feelings and suppress their needs, avoid difficult conversations in order to keep things running smoothly. This dynamic isn't about blame, it's about unequal emotional training. And the result, one person becomes the safe space for both of them, while no one becomes a safe space for them. Fear of rejection or punishment. Some of us learned that telling the truth about how we feel leads to punishment, whether that is emotional or physical. Maybe you were called too sensitive or dramatic or too emotional growing up. Maybe you were punished for crying, or you were given the silent treatment after speaking up, or you were somehow made to feel like your pain was a burden. So now, even in adult relationships, your body braces itself when it's time for honesty because of the lack of emotional safety. So you're anticipating something bad is going to happen. You hesitate even when you know it's safe now because your nervous system is still wired to fear what might come next. The good partner script. Let's name this one too. We're taught what a quote unquote good partner looks like. And often it includes phrases like, pick your battles. Don't make a big deal out of nothing. Just let it go. It's not worth it. These scripts are usually internalized by the person doing the most emotional labor. They learn to swallow discomfort to avoid seeming dramatic or too needy. But that creates a lopsided dynamic where one person is always containing their truth and the other never learns how to hold space for that truth. Unhealed trauma in past relationships. If you've been through a relationship where you were gaslit, manipulated, cheated on, or emotionally neglected, your capacity to feel safe may be fractured. Even in a healthier relationship, you might still flinch. You might still question your instincts. You might still anticipate danger even when there is none, because your body remembers, even when your mind says you're safe now. Emotional safety doesn't just depend on who you're with. It depends on what you've been through and whether those wounds have been acknowledged, healed, or at least held with compassion. And that's why it's so powerful when you finally feel safe in a relationship. It can feel disorienting, unfamiliar, and even scary. Because for many of us, safety is not what we grew up with, but it is what we deserve to create. So now that we've talked about what emotional safety isn't and where it tends to break down, I want to slow down breathe with you for a second, and talk about what emotional safety actually feels like. Because it's not just a concept, it's a full body experience. And if you've never felt it before, it can be hard to recognize, especially at first. So let's paint the picture. Safety feels like you can say what you really mean, not the softened version, not the version you edited 3 times in your head to avoid a fight, the real version. It's the freedom to say, that hurt my feelings. I don't know how to explain this, but I need you to listen. Or can I talk to you about something, even if it's messy, and not be met with mockery, defensiveness, or shutdown? Just presence, curiosity, and care. Safety feels like you can bring hard things into the room without breaking the relationship. It's not about always agreeing. It's knowing that disagreement won't shatter your connection. You can say, I feel differently, and not worry that love will be withdrawn or that you're going to be pushed away. You can ask, can we try something else? And not be made to feel ungrateful or demanding. Safe relationships can stretch and bend. They don't snap the minute you need. Safety feels like not having to earn your softness. You can cry without apologizing. You can be confused without being shamed. You can say, I'm not okay, without having to follow it up with a solution. In safe relationships, vulnerability isn't a burden, it's a bridge. Safety feels like you're not performing. You're not calculating your tone, overthinking your words, rehearsing your truths to make it more palatable. You're not the therapist in the relationship. You're not the emotional babysitter. You're not the one constantly regulating, managing, or fixing. You just get to be messy, honest, human. And the other person meets you there with care, not correction. Safety feels like your nervous system can relax. You don't have to scan for danger. You don't have to hold your breath after bringing something up. You don't have to walk on eggshells every time there's tension. Instead, your body learns, I'm not alone in this. I can speak and I'll be heard. I can feel and I won't be punished. That's emotional safety. And for many of us, it's brand new. Sometimes the first time we experience it, it's jarring. We might cry afterward, not because we're sad, but because our body is finally relaxing. Sometimes we resist it because we've never had that kind of presence before, and it feels too intimate, too good, too foreign. So we push it away, we hide from it. And that's pretty normal. I mean, I'll say for myself, when I did finally feel emotional safety for the first time, I very much felt like, ew, what the fuck? I hate this. Make it stop. Like, I can't handle this. Like, it was so scary to me. It, I'm trying to think of like how to articulate it. It feels like physically, for me at least, it felt physically jarring. Like physically, I could feel the anxiety in my body. I could feel the panic of like, oh my God, well, what is this? And it was just me feeling safe. Anyway, sometimes we don't even know that we needed it until we feel it. But once you do, you can't unknow it. And you can't go back to emotional starvation once you've tasted safety. And that is really wonderful. Now let's talk about how we build emotional safety. Because while some people might come into our lives already capable of holding space, many of us have to learn it. And even if you've never had it before, you can still help to create it for yourself and for someone else. It starts with presence. Self-awareness comes first. You can't create emotional safety for anyone else if you don't know your own patterns. This means asking yourself questions like, do I shut down when someone brings up hard things? Do I get defensive when I feel criticized, even gently? Do I interrupt to correct instead of listening to understand? Do I expect people to get over things because I am so uncomfortable with their feelings. Building emotional safety isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware of how your reactions affect someone else's ability to open up. And I can say for myself that even though I feel like I am such a self-aware person or such a sensitive person, there have been a lot of times when I have not created emotional safety. And that has to do with my own insecurities. So things like, especially being defensive when being criticized, no matter how somebody would present the criticism, it really made me so uncomfortable that I immediately got defensive and kind of like shut it down. And I think I've talked about this in other episodes, but it did create an environment where people felt like they couldn't even bring things to me. So they just didn't talk to me about shit. So that would be an example of not creating emotional safety. And I will say right up front, it's something that I think I still have to work on. Feeling like I need to defend myself, feeling so misunderstood, it's something that like I actively have to choose and constantly have to remind myself of. Like if I want my partner, for example, to create emotional safety for me, I also have to create that for my partner. So building emotional safety isn't about being perfect. And that's really important for us to remember because at the end of the day, we are all human beings and we're going to fuck it up sometimes. You are not always going to get it right. As I said, it's something that I feel like I am constantly working on as a mom, as a partner, as a friend, etc. It's about being aware of how your reactions affect someone's ability to open up. So if you are constantly defending yourself when someone brings up even constructive criticism, they're not going to feel safe to talk to you about stuff. So they won't, as in the example I just mentioned. Building emotional safety also means responding, not reacting. Emotional safety is created in the moment after someone brings something hard to the table. Do you pause? Do you breathe? Or do you jump into defense mode? This is one of the most intimate skills we can learn, holding space between the trigger and the response. Instead of saying, "You're being dramatic," you can try saying, "I didn't know you felt that way. Can you tell me more?" Or, "That's not what happened." Try saying instead, "That wasn't my intention, but I can see how you would feel that way." Or, "That's not where I was coming from, but I can see why you feel that way." That moment right there, that's where the safety begins or ends. Because if you're shutting someone down or correcting them, if I'll give an example because my partner and I actually just had a disagreement where I felt emotionally unsafe. And so I I expressed how I felt and he couldn't understand like how we got to that place, right? And so I broke down like, okay, so this happened and it kind of threw me off. And then a little bit later on, this happened and it also kind of threw me off. But I just kept trying to power through that part of like just keep on keeping on. And then finally, this third thing happened. And that's where I was like, all right, now I'm being emotionally bullied here. And even though none of those things were intentional on his part, like he didn't even realize that that's what was happening. He just was kind of like talking it, it I'm trying to think of I can't think of the exact example and I know that that's so not helpful right now, but like it wasn't malicious. It was really like a difference in perspectives, but at first he was kind of like, well, that's not what I was doing, and that was it. Like there wasn't any talking about it, right? I had to do the okay, so first this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Can you understand why from my perspective this might not feel good to me based on X, Y, and Z all together? I know that you may not have intended for me to feel bad with any of those things that you said or did, but can you also see how I might have received it that way? And so that once he paused and said to me something like, yeah, I'm really sorry. I didn't even realize that. I can see where you're coming from. Can't remember exactly what was said, but that was so pivotal because from that point on, it really de escalated the situation because I was feeling so frustrated by the fact that he couldn't understand how what he had said or done had impacted me emotionally. And he felt frustrated because he didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but my feelings were hurt. And so we had this like conflict of, well, that's not what I meant. And I'm like, well, this is still how it landed. And once he put aside that's not what I meant and just heard and acknowledged that that's how it landed anyway, it helped us to move toward repair and kind of saved the rest of our day, we'll say. And that brings us right to normalizing repair. Safe relationships aren't conflict free. They just know how to come back together. Emotional safety is built every time someone says, hey, I think we got disconnected. Can we try again? Or I didn't handle that well. I'm sorry. Or I want to understand what upset you. Repair isn't about winning. It's not even necessarily about agreeing. It's about choosing the relationship over your ego. It's about reminding the other person, I care more about how we move forward than about being right. And that is what I was saying before in the example about me and my partner, that it was so frustrating. And we were both kind of like, well, no, this is how I feel. And he was like, well, this is how I feel. And there's no moving forward there, right? Like if you're obviously not seeing eye to eye, you're not on the same page. Your partner is saying one thing, you're saying another thing, and somehow you both feel very, very disconnected, whatever the situation is. And then you just feel frustrated. You feel, one of you might feel defensive, one of you might feel abandoned. The point is that even in those moments where things can get a little bit heated and spiral a little bit, one of you has the ability to stop it, right? Like one of you can say, hold on a minute, this is spiraling. Can we take a beat? Or like in the example that I shared just before with the disagreement that my partner and I had, for me, it was like, can you just hear me out? I need to walk through this with you so that you can understand that it wasn't about that last thing that you said, but it was like, because he was so hung up on that one last thing. And he's like, how did that cause you to be so upset? And I was like, okay, but it wasn't that. Can you just listen? You just hear me out. I just need to explain to you how we got here and how I got to that and what I was feeling. And me saying that and then him also reacting in kind and saying, okay, and not interrupting me and just like listening, even if he may have felt in that moment like he needed to defend himself, he didn't. And he paused and he listened and he took it all in. And that was pivotal, like I said. I try very often when we have disagreements to remind myself that it's not about right and wrong because everyone's experience is their own. And as two different human beings, two separate entities, even if we are living in the same moment, in the same space, we are not having the exact same experience. That's just part of being a human being. So I think that over time, having those moments, creating that repair and that safety and kind of figuring out what works best for you and your partner as far as like the language that you choose is so important. And that's really how you start to build that safety and create those healthier patterns. And that's going to take practice, right? You're not always going to get it right, but over time, it will get easier and you will get it right more often than not. A big part of that repair is speaking in feelings and not accusations. The way that we bring things up matters. So, for example, you could say, "You're always on your phone," and that's an accusation. If you instead say, "When I'm talking to you and you're distracted, I feel ignored or I feel invisible." Do you see the difference? One automatically triggers defensiveness, while the other invites empathy. Because, I mean, I think that it's important that we, and this is again something that I still practicing and learning, not speaking in absolutes. So, not using words like always and never. That's really important because right off the bat, that's an accusation, and it makes it so, I don't know. There's no wiggle room, right? Nobody's always doing something. Nobody's never doing something. And they just don't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good to be told like, "You never spend time with me." Saying something instead like, "I feel like we're not spending time together after work or, during the week. And it would really mean a lot to me if we could figure out a time that is just ours." Because emotional safety thrives in conversations where both people can name their feelings without blame. It's a practice and it's a powerful one. With that being said, creating emotional safety includes inviting check ins, not confrontations. Safety doesn't have to come in the form of big, dramatic talks. Sometimes it sounds like, "Is this still a good time to talk?" Or, "I noticed you seemed off earlier. Do you want to talk about it?" Or, "I've been feeling a little disconnected. How are we doing?" And these regular, low stakes emotional check ins build trust. They let both people know you don't have to wait for things to explode before we care. Another example that I can use from myself and my partner, he's really bad at hiding how he feels. And so when he is off, I know right off the bat. And he works in he has two jobs and both jobs are customer service based. So when he has a rough day at work, I can usually tell just by how he's acting, even if he doesn't talk to me about it right off the bat. And so I've learned to just kind of like give him space, and sometimes he'll just talk to me and sometimes he won't. Sometimes he's just kind of agitated and trying to power through and doesn't even realize that that's what he's doing. So saying something like, "Hey, I noticed that you seem a little bit agitated. Are you okay?" 9 out of 10 times he's going to tell me one of two things. He's going to say, "Yeah, I had a rough day at work and I don't want to talk about it right now." Or he's actually going to tell me, "I had a rough day at work, XYZ happened." Either way, by recognizing that there is some tension happening, and by me opening that door and just acknowledging that, I am hoping to create more safety so that he feels like he can talk to me about things. Because it's not even necessarily about like, "Oh, you seemed off, are you mad at me?" It's genuinely not. And I think that that's also really important because you don't always want to have these big dramatic talks, right? If you're, "Are you mad at me? Are you?" It's not fun because then that automatically creates an opportunity for defensiveness, etc. Just, "Hey, just checking in. Something seems off." That's all it takes. And I think that I kind of mentioned this, something else that is really important and something that I'm actively working on in my relationship right now is creating co-regulation rituals. I know that that sounds really clinical, but it's deeply intimate and it's so important. So, co-regulation is the process of calming down together. It's the way nervous systems sync. It can look like sitting in bed with your hands on each other's hearts, holding eye contact during a tough conversation without rushing to fix it, sitting close after an argument and saying, "We're okay, I'm here." some examples of co-regulation that I use. People have bad days. You have a rough day at work, you have a rough day with the kids. I think that he's really good at recognizing when I'm overwhelmed. And so our biggest co-regulation thing is wherever we catch each other, it's usually in the kitchen. We have a lot of kitchen hugs. So, whether it's between meals, cleaning up or preparing a meal or whatever, it seems like we're always catching each other in the kitchen, and one of us is feeling overwhelmed and the other one recognizes it and just kind of leans in for a hug. And I mean, this isn't just like a quick hug. This is like a solid several seconds long hug and moment of breathing and like syncing with one another and just grounding and knowing that we are in it together. Again, that I'm here. W- We've got this. Like those moments rebuild trust in our bodies, like truly deeply build safety in our bodies and remind us and ground us in that safety. So, probably the scariest of all of these is letting yourself be seen, especially for people who have spent years being the strong one, the calm one, the together one. Sometimes the most powerful way to build emotional safety is by modeling it, by going first, by being the person to say, "This is hard for me to say," or "I've been holding on to something and I really want to let you in and talk about it," or "I'm afraid to share this, but I trust you." And those seemingly small things, those seemingly small statements are so magnetic because they invite connection. It shows the other person that you can show up like this too. Emotional safety is not built overnight. It's built in hundreds of small, sacred moments of truth. When someone cries and doesn't get shut out or judged, when someone admits fear and is met with softness, when someone owns their part and doesn't get punished for it. We build safety when we make it safe to feel. Sometimes emotional safety is hard to name, but your body knows it when you feel it. So let's talk about the signs, not just what emotional safety is in theory, but what it actually feels like when it's present in your relationship. Because you might be feeling it for the first time and not even realize that that's what it is. When you're not constantly rehearsing, you don't have to script your texts before you send them. You don't replay every conversation afterward, worried you may have said too much. You're not living in your head, editing yourself before you speak. When you feel safe, you can be present and not feel like you have to perform. You feel seen even when you're messy. You don't have to put on a happy face. You can have a bad day, be off your game, and still feel loved. You can admit you're anxious, upset, tired, or even angry and not fear being punished. You're not walking on eggshells. You know your emotions won't scare them or push them away. You don't feel like you're too much or not enough. In an emotionally unsafe dynamic, we often oscillate between feeling like we're too intense or not worth the effort. But when there's safety, you stop shrinking to be palatable. You stop overextending to be worthy. You're just enough as you are without feeling like you need to prove anything. You can take a breath, literally. Your body relaxes around them. You're not constantly bracing for misinterpretation. You're not monitoring your tone. You're not scanning for signs that they're annoyed, checked out, or pulling away. Your nervous system feels calmer in their presence, not more activated. That's not just emotional. That's physiological safety. You can be honest, even about things that feel risky. You can say things like, "That hurt my feelings. I need more support." or this is hard for me to talk about. And they don't respond with anger or stonewalling or defensiveness. They respond instead with curiosity. They listen. Maybe they ask questions. Maybe they just hold space. But the conversation doesn't blow up just because it's hard. You're not always the one holding the emotional bag. In emotionally safe relationships, the labor is shared. You don't always have to be the one checking in, who always initiates repair, who always carries the weight of the emotional climate. The other person meets you there. You both show up. It's not perfect, but it's mutual. You trust the connection even when things get tense. And this one is huge. In emotionally unsafe relationships, a disagreement feels like a threat to the whole relationship, like one argument could undo everything. But when there's safety, you trust the tension won't break you. You trust that both of you want to come back together. There's space for rupture and repair, and that security changes everything. So ask yourself, where in my life do I feel emotionally safe? Who lets me bring my full self to the table? And where am I still holding my breath, waiting for the floor to fall out? Emotional safety doesn't just protect us, it transforms us. It lets us speak softer, love harder, and exhale fully. If you've made it this far, thank you. This one was a big one, and it was pretty deep in that I feel like, at least for me, I was a little extra vulnerable. So thank you for listening and allowing me that space to be vulnerable. We talked about what emotional safety really is, not just surface stability, but the kind of safety that makes space for your whole self. We explored how to recognize it, how to notice when it's missing, and how to start building it together. And if you're sitting with a heavy feeling right now, maybe you're realizing that you've never actually felt emotionally safe in a relationship. I want to say this very clearly. It is not too late to learn. You are worthy of relationships where you don't have to shrink to be loved. You are allowed to ask for safety, not just support, not just partnership, but true emotional refuge. And if you're the one listening and realizing, I don't think I've been a safe space, that awareness is not shame. So please do not walk away feeling shame. This is an invitation, and it can be a starting point. We are all learning this as we go, especially if we've never had it modeled for us. I would love to hear what resonated with you from this episode. What makes you feel emotionally safe? What's one thing you're working on to build safety in your relationships? DM me on Instagram or TikTok at teatime.tara or head to teatimetara.com. If you want to share your story, stay in the loop, or be a part of future episodes, I would love to hear from you. You can also email me at tara@teatimetara.com. And if this episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who you feel might need to hear it. That is how we grow this community, by sharing and creating spaces that feel safe to show up and speak truth. I would really appreciate if you would leave a review. That really helps my show to reach other people, and subscribe. I'm so sorry that it has been so long. I feel like usually I kind of go into at the beginning of the show what's been going on with me, and I did not do that this time. So we're doing it at the back end here. Basically, this summer has been so busy at work. I've worked an insane amount of overtime. And so I genuinely have not had the mental capacity to wrap my head around recording a show, especially one that can be pretty intimate. For me, this does take obviously, it takes some preparation. I have to prepare a script, notes, and also just like I want to be authentic with you guys. And in order to be able to do that, that takes some emotional vulnerability. So thank you for coming back. And to those of you who are new, thank you so much for hanging in there with me. Now that the summer is coming to an end, my schedule is going to be a lot more regular. So I will be able to start recording more frequent episodes as we come to wrap up this mini series about relationships and communication in relationships. I have a lot of really cool guests lined up. I have been speaking to several people now, and I want to get them booked. I will have the actual time to do that, but I will also have the mental and emotional bandwidth to do that because I'm not going to be panicking all the time about how the hell I'm going to get whatever done. So, again, thank you for hanging in there with me. Thank you for continuing to support the show. I really appreciate all of you. Thinking of going live at some point, not sure when or how, but I have some really cool guests lined up and I am really excited to share that with you. I don't think that I would go live with a guest. I feel like that doesn't allow the same intimacy and authenticity that I do try to curate and facilitate on my show. We'll see. I might just kind of hop on a live and say hi and check in with you guys. TBD, let me know actually if that's something that you would like. Next up, in the 4th episode of Can We Talk, we're going to be getting into validation and invalidation, how it shows up in communication, what it does to our nervous systems, and how to stop doing it to ourselves and to each other. This is going to be another really powerful one and probably a little bit uncomfortable, but in all the best ways. Because if we are not a little bit uncomfortable, then we are not growing. Until then, I am sending you all love and clarity, especially to those of you who are untangling what safety feels like. You are doing such beautiful work. And as always, continue to speak your truth and don't take anyone's shit. See you next time.